What are some common facts that people believe to be true even if the existing evidence states the contrary? Camels don't use their humps to store water. They use them to store fat reserves. Because storing fat reserves around the body like humans would keep them too warm. So they have it all in one spot. Edit. Since the day metabolizes as water and CO2, it is in a way a water source. Worms come out when it rains because they are drowning in their holes. No. Not really. They mostly come out because when it rains heavily, they are able to survive on the surface for much longer and move around, finding new areas to feed and more worms to breed with. Cutting your facial hair makes it grow in thicker. I had a full-on argument with an individual who firmly believed that genetics played no possible role in hair growth whatsoever. I have never been more perplexed or angry in my entire life. Sincerely. That Einstein was a bad student and was bad at math. It's just not true. He got average high marks and was really just disdainful of the structure of school. And he was good at math. Physics is like 90% math. I get why people share it. It's to make struggling students feel better about themselves. But can't we tell them about something else instead of lying? Just show them the salary of a plumber or welder compared to their teacher's salary. That ought to cheer them up. Edit. Thanks for the award. And also I'm silencing notifications as I woke up to 50 replies this morning. The most violent arguments I've had have been convincing patients with a viral cold that they don't need antibiotics. A few people still believe that opening windows before a tornado to even the pressure will save their house from damage. Some also still believe trailer parks attract tornadoes and that random sacred landmarks can protect cities from tornadoes. People still think an undercover cop has to tell you they're a cop. How does that even make sense? Months of preparations ruined on the first day because someone happened to ask the magic question. Cops are allowed to lie to you and they will pretend to be your friend to get what they need from you. Side note. Even if you're innocent of a crime, the first words from your mouth should be "I want a lawyer." And you don't provide any information until you have one. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. It is rarely necessary to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. That 30 used to be considered ancient back when the average lifespan was 25 or whatever. The average is offset by a huge number of child deaths. 30 was never ancient. Even hunter-gatherer societies had people routinely living into their 60s. Vikings never actually drank from skulls of enemies. A lot of people think they can burn belly fat by doing crunches or slim their arms down by doing push-ups. But targeted fat loss isn't possible and there's no evidence to suggest it is. Yeah. Ab workouts just build up your core muscle and burn calories. The kitchen is where you lose the belly fat. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. In fact it does. And frequently. You don't want to be there when it happens. A person drowning is not likely to be flailing wildly and yelling like in the movies. Drowning can often happen with mostly silence. Especially with kids. Read up on the signs. It might save a life. I was drowning and lost consciousness when I was 5. I was told I barely made a sound. I went under. Sucked in lungs full of water when I tried to cry out in surprise and blacked out. If it wasn't for my dad's instincts and quick action I'd be dead. Your heart stops when you sneeze. I mean, have you seen my dad sneeze? No wonder the heart needs a break. You can tap a block to see if it is loose in Jenga, which is stated quite explicitly in the rules, and you everyone who said I couldn't. Alpha theory and dog training. The researcher that originally described the dominance theory was watching captive wolves at a zoo, a pack that was artificially created from unrelated specimens. The hierarchy in this curated collection was determined through fights and struggles for dominance, and this dynamic was then applied to domestic dogs and how they view themselves in relation to humans. This drove the dominate your dog style of training popular with Cesar Millan and his acolytes. When the scientific community was able to observe a wild wolf pack, however, They discovered that wild packs are family units and operate much the same way, with a parental breeding pair at the top and their younger offspring forming the pack. Sometimes several litters at a time. As the pups grow older, they break off and form their own packs. The researcher that dismantled the theory, David Meck, described it thusly: attempting to apply information about the behavior of assemblages of unrelated captive wolves to the familial structure of natural packs has resulted in considerable confusion. Such an approach is analogous to trying to draw inferences about human family dynamics by studying humans in refugee camps. Cracking your knuckles too often will give you arthritis. Nope. No conclusive study has ever backed this up. It just releases the gas from the synovial fluid in your joints, which is neither good nor bad. When you swallow gum, it stays in your body for 7 years. I scrolled fairly far down and did not see what came to mind for me. A lot of people think blood is blue inside of the body, and that it only appears red because of the oxygen or something in the air. I tried to explain this to a past coworker, who was a former nurse, and she wasn't having any of it. Turns out a lot of otherwise smart people believe that with no evidence. But blood is always red, just darker at some points of circulation in the body. Different rib counts for different genders. Just count them, Lois. That if you touch a baby animal, like a bird or rabbit, its mother will neglect it and it will die. That is a myth. That punk in the UK was a reaction response to Margaret Thatcher. Punk broke in the UK in 1976-7. When the sitting government was Labour, or an alliance of Labour and other left-wing parties. Thatcher's Conservatives weren't elected until 1979. Chicken is cooked when it is no longer pink and the juices run clear. In fact, it's cooked when it hits 75°C, 165°F. And that's it. What it looks like depends on the cut. Chicken breast often has significant pink in it when it hits the temperature. Which is why most people complain about dry, boring chicken. Because they overcook it. On the flip side, wings can look cooked when they aren't. Which is why they're a major source of food poisoning. The most important thing I learned working in a commercial kitchen. People often confuse an independent media for an unbiased one. The most people only use 10% of their brain's capacity thing. Utterly ridiculous. The brain is a giant, metabolically expensive, staggeringly complex structure. Why on earth would our bodies grow something like that and then not use it? Edit. A lot of people in this thread have some very strange ideas about brains. Yes. If all your neurons fired at once, that would be extremely bad. The thing to bear in mind is that different areas and structures of the brain are highly specialized for certain tasks. Talking about an overall brain capacity is misleading. There are no unused areas of the brain. You're almost certainly right. But it just makes me think of my friend that daughter you were cute to. That being in a cold place causes common cold. Edit. Yes. I know that being in a cold place makes your immune system weaker, and because of that it's easier to get sick. But that wasn't the thing I was trying to say. I've been trying to convince my mother for 30 years that going to bed with wet hair will not make you wake up with a cold. She will believe it to the grave. The fact that resistant and proof, i.e. water resistant and waterproof, is two separate things and are not the same. There is so many people that believe them to be the same. That Napoleon was short. That cow is giving milk because that's how this animal work. They don't believe me when I'm telling them that she needs to have baby to start producing milk. McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit is an example of a frivolous lawsuit. McDonald's was told multiple times by the health department not to serve coffee so hot. My biggest pet peeve is when people say sweating is an effective way to rid your body of toxins. First of all, what toxins? Second of all, our bodies are made with an effective waste system that gets rid of things we don't need or that are harmful to us. It's called peeing and pooping. Sweating is our body's way of cooling itself down. It's not a waste removal system. It's just a quick way to get dehydrated and lose a lot of sodium. Which we need. That strawberries are actually berries and watermelons aren't. Just because you see a raccoon during the day doesn't mean it's rabbit. So I have a Geiger counter. And sometimes I'll bring it out just for fun when I'm hanging out with friends. I cannot even tell you how many people freak out when they see a number that isn't 0. 00 on the screen. In reality, a little bit of radiation isn't at all dangerous. In fact, we're surrounded by ionizing radiation due to things ranging from naturally occurring elements in the soil to cosmic radiation. Levels will rise near things like granite countertops due to small amounts of thorium and uranium. During a flight, radiation levels go up by 10-25x plus what they are on the surface, due to less shielding from cosmic radiation by the atmosphere. Moral of the story. From what I've seen, people tend to think that radiation is some terrifying thing, and that it doesn't take a lot to give someone cancer or radiation sickness. And in reality, it takes a lot. 420 did not originate from the L. A police or penal code for marijuana use. The use of 420 started in 1971 at San Rafael High School, where it indicated the time. 420. There's no such thing as an alpha wolf. The naturist who first described them spent years trying to clarify the matter, but the idea just caught on too hard. The dominant wolves in the pack he had been observing when he came up with the alpha wolf theory were, he later discovered, just the parents of the rest of them. Groups of more than one family do converge and engage in social activity. But the notion that wolves live according to a hierarchical structure is pure fantasy. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Some things from the comments. The distinction between dominant parents and alphas is that the parents don't necessarily achieve their leadership positions by being the biggest, strongest, most aggressive animals in the pack. They get it by raising the pups. Also, apparently alpha wolves do emerge in captive packs of unrelated animals. So it's not that alphas don't exist, it's just that they're a prison rules phenomenon. Also, I said naturist when I meant naturalist. Masturbating will cause you to go blind. I could never see why people would say that. Carrots make you see better. Carrots can actually blind you if you try to eat them in the dark while really drunk. Trust me. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, doesn't refer to OMG I can't take it when the red jelly beans are in the blue jar or anything to do with liking symmetry or being a neat freak. Actual victims of OCD do things like stand by the light switch in a room and repeatedly flick it on and off for hours and mentally break down halfway through. Or making gestures as if they're washing their hand by a basin despite there being no water and that they simply cannot control the urge to make those gestures. The word disorder indicates, among other things, that the symptoms are severe enough to downright disrupt one's daily life and stop you from carrying out your normal routines and activities. People should stop saying things like I'm just so OCD. I can't help but round up the numbers, as people are misinformed enough about this disorder. That if you scratch while trying to pocket the 8-ball you lose. African American English, AAE, is bad or uneducated English. It's not. It's just a different dialect like anything else. Linguists are in unanimous agreement on this. And when you look at the data, it's clear that the mistakes in AAE are just normal grammatical differences. AAE's grammatical rules are systematic and create useful structures, just like standard American English's rules. Comparing SAE and AAE is no different than comparing BBC, standard British, English and SAE. Feels like a good time to put this one to rest. Edit. If you're not convinced, please think about what bad English actually means to you. What does bad mean in this context? Morally wrong? Inefficient? Inconsistent? AAE is none of those things. Are you positive the specific rules you were taught in school are the only right way to talk? Did the people who made that decision have the authority to do so? On what basis? You don't catch a cold by being out in cold weather, or from being wet. The number of times I hear this is infuriating. You have to come in contact with a virus in order for it to infect you. It doesn't materialize out of thin air. We only use 10% of our brain. Cracking your knuckles gives you arthritis. Multitasking is a skill. I got mocked by 2 boomers on a job interview for saying that I thought multitasking was doing 2 tasks poorly at once. Why did I think that? Because that's what all the research says. If you pick up a baby bird, you can return it to its nest. The mother will not abandon it just because you touched it. Wildlife biologists and rehabbers do it all the time. Total myth. A lot of people still think that ADHD is a fake disorder. The brain scans of a brain with ADHD is literally shaped differently than a regular brain. That women's vaginas get loose when they've had a lot of sex. They can squeeze out a whole human baby and people still think a dick will permanently deform them? Equality of outcome is the same thing as equality of opportunity. Changing your oil every 3,000 miles. That humans swallow on average X amounts of spiders during their sleep throughout their lifetimes. It's an unfounded fact and made up urban myth that people like to parrot around the dinner table. Semicolon. Edit. Legit made my account like 3 hours ago after being a long time lurker and now I have to deal with all this attention. Dot. Semicolon. Edit. Thanks for the Illuminati award. Kind stranger. That you should drink at least 2 liters of water a day. There is only some 1930 TS recommendation that you should consume about 2 liters of water a day. But it includes water in your food. Even though it is probably better to drink more water. It is not well studied and there is no scientific proof. Full stop. That your political party is 100% correct and that the other is 100% wrong. Freedom of speech means you can shut down people arguing against your inaccurate information or clearly negatively biased opinions. Epstein killed himself. No one believes this to be true. A lot of people here are confusing facts with theories. The United States is a fully functional democracy and is the embodiment of personal freedom and economic opportunity. Trump is a good president. Many people think that Earth is 6,000 years old. That's what the Earth says to cover her real age. Dogs can't look up. Frag grenades generate huge explosions. No. They don't. Thanks, Hollywood, for eyeing up our view on frag grenades. That the customer is always right, IA. Apparently the origin of that was a marketing thing. Not a customer service thing. Aka if the customer base as a whole is buying product A more than any other products you make. You should be focusing on A even if you think B or C is a better product. It was never meant that the individual with a complaint is always right. That unbiased media means giving both sides equal treatment. Nope. Unbiased media is reporting how things are. If one presidential candidate is completely bonkers compared to the other, that's how things should be reported. That America's official language is English. Or even that it has one at all. America is completely abandoned, legally, to the language. That having a tax-funded and universal healthcare system is bad for the finances of a country, the economy and unsustainable in the long run. IDK if people consider it a fact per se. The 3-5-second rule of dropping any food is indeed already carrying every and any germs on the ground. It's been proven and it's not like bacteria for example go. Hang on. Let's give the human a chance to get before we commit to ruining this person's day. That voter fraud is a legitimate issue in the United States. Actual cases of voter fraud are so rare that they are practically non-existent. But then again, people believe voter fraud is a significant problem because of misinformation spread by those trying to justify policies that make voting harder and disenfranchise those who may be more apt to vote for the opposing political party. Russian collusion. Vitamin C boosts your immune system. Countless double-blind trials show that if you're not deficient in vitamin C, it will have no effect on your health. And if you take high vitamin C foods, the majority of it comes out in your waste. Africa is not a country. It is made up of 54 countries. You don't not lose 90% if your body heat through your head. If you could, you should be able to wear a knit cap and go outside naked in the winter and make naked snow angels in your neighbor's yard and not get severe hypothermia that results in a rather embarrassing trip to the emergency room. Hypothetically, that the paint is eyeing wet. The war on drugs was successful. In fact, that it's illegal to turn on the overhead lamp in a vehicle. You mom and dad, I just wanted to play my Game Boy. There are no aliens on Mars. Type 1 diabetes can be cured by herbs. Or oils. Or this new diet or Mother. Let's make a deal. I'll try, or if you first let me remove your eyes with a melon baller. And you can use your woo woo crystal to get your vision back. Oh. Suddenly not so sure of your cure? Why not? Not like being blind is fatal. Where me going off insulin would kill me pretty damn quickly. Germany is the aggressor in World War I. If the price tag is wrong, the store must sell it to you for the incorrect price. There is no requirement to wait an hour after eating before swimming. That if you're innocent, you need not fear the police. Sorry if it's been posted already, but I hate that people still think the weather will cause you to get a cold. That the sex of a child is determined by the woman. The actual case is that the lucky sperm of the man determines the sex. It is more often than not a 50/50 on male or female offspring. I think this came from a certain British king. Cough Henry VI cough. Vaccines cause autism. Vaccines cause autism. No. They cause autistic children to live long enough to have their autism diagnosed. If your child has autism, you most likely have some autistic traits of your own. Ironically, clinging to your beliefs despite overwhelming proof you are wrong is a very typically autistic stubbornness. We autistic people despise sudden change, and it takes random degrees of effort for us to adapt to what would be like flicking a switch for normal people. On a scale of how hard it is from 0 to 10. It can literally be anything between 0 and 10, and the number is rolled again for every single individual issue. Some people believe the word nuclear to be pronounced as nuclear, despite the lack of a U vowel between the C and L within the word. I just shoehorned that response into this post because it sort of doesn't belong here, but still gets on my nerves. MSG is bad for you. People think that when social media or companies fire you or ban your account for saying something, that it's infringement on their First Amendment rights. The thing is, the First Amendment says this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is specifically talking about the government and not private companies or corporations. So it is not an infringement in your First Amendment rights. Now there are other laws in place that do give you rights, but it's not the First Amendment. The earth is flat. That the community members protesting in Minneapolis are the same people setting everything on fire. A dog or cat having a wet, dry, cold, warm nose doesn't mean it's an old wives' tale. Now if there's coughing, sneezing, or discharge from the nose or eyes, then take your pet to vet. That penises on Roman statues are small because small penises were a sign of intelligence. Or rather, large penises were barbaric. This comes from one quote in an old writing that is really suspect. The main reason is to give focus on a piece of art. The statue. If the guy was hung, or even normal sized, all eyes would completely focus on that. But if made small, you don't. This is a common practice in art. And guess what? It works. Having a baby will save your relationship or make an irresponsible man suddenly man up for his family. Babies only amplify all your existing problems and you should not have them until you are ready. Sugar rushes. Some studies were done and it's mainly just little kids acting like little kids. And their parents expecting them to act up after having sugar from decades of saying that's what is supposed to happen. No evidence actually points to them being any more worked up. It's something I've brought up and been ridiculed for it. And despite saying just Google it, I'm still perceived as wrong. Police are the biggest threat to black people. Look at the homicide statistics and the biggest threat to a black person is another black person. Black on black crime is far more common than white on black or police on black crime. Black on black crime doesn't exist. It's just crime. Like 89% of black murders are committed by black people. While 87% of Hispanic murders are committed by Hispanic and 84% of white murders are committed by whites. People kill who they interact with the most. We've known that since the dawn of time. The people who act like that 5% increase draws a line between civilization and barbarism are just grasping at straws to push racist ideals. That Muslims have a completely unique deity named Allah. He's exactly the same entity as the Judeo-Christian God. Jehovah. Allah is the Arabic word for God. Arabic-speaking Christians pray to Allah too. That Columbus was a good man. The COVID-19 virus came from bats. At the moment, nothing has been proven. I wonder if coronavirus came from a guy eating bat soup will become the new Columbus sailed to America to prove the earth was round. Untrue. Unverifiable historical claim that still gets believed and still makes for a fascinating story. Schizophrenia means split personality. Trickle-down economics. The biggest scam this country has ever been fed and they still want more. There is no scientific evidence to show GMOs are any worse or better than non-GMOs. All they do is protect against pesticides and get a bigger yield.